I'm Nate Foy. For 13 years, the identity of the Long Island serial killer defied investigators and terrified locals. In 2010 and 2011, investigators found 11 bodies on or near Gilgo Beach, where we are today. 9 women, many of them sex workers, an unidentified Asian man, and a toddler. But on July 14th, 2023, came a stunning development in the cold case. The arrest of a suburban family man from Long Island, Rex Heuermann, for the murder of 3 of the 11. Suffolk County Police say they had him in their sights since 2022, but had to work in secrecy until they were ready to take him down. His sudden arrest has led to shocking revelations about the evidence against him. He faces 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 for second-degree murder. He's pleaded not guilty. While Heuermann is in custody at a Suffolk County jail, the investigation, authorities say, is continuing.
I'm standing here with my law enforcement partners in the Gilgo Task Force to announce the indictment of defendant Rex Andrew Heuermann, 59 years of age. He's been arrested by the Suffolk County Police Department's homicide detectives for the murders of Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. The investigation of Maureen Brainerd Barnes is ongoing.
Rex Heuermann is a demon that walks among us, a predator that ruined families. If not for the members of this task force, he would still be out in the streets today.
Heuermann's arrest comes after Suffolk County's new police commissioner, former NYPD Chief Rodney Harrison, formed a special Gilgo Beach task force in January 2022 with new District Attorney Ray Tierney. The task force includes the FBI, New York State Police, Suffolk County Homicide, and the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office. All of them committed to breaking cold cases, no matter what it takes.
We made the commitment. We were going to take our most talented investigators. We took analysts, we took detective investigators, and they worked on a daily basis with other talented investigators from all of the agencies here. And we started that in February 1st, in 2022. 6 weeks later, on March 14th, 2022, the name Rex Heuermann was first mentioned as a suspect.
In December of 2010, police discovered the remains of 4 young women, all within a quarter-mile of each other in Gilgo Beach, a barrier island on the south shore of Long Island. All were found wrapped in a type of burlap used by hunters. Ironically, at the time of their discovery, they were searching for another missing woman, 24-year-old Shannon Gilbert, whose remains were eventually found in Oak Beach in 2011. When the search resumed that same year, police found an additional 7 sets of human remains in both Suffolk and Nassau counties. Of the 4 women known as the Gilgo 4, Rex Heuermann is accused of murdering 3 of them. 24-year-old Buffalo native Melissa Bartholomew, last seen alive in July 2009. Megan Waterman, 22 years old, from Maine, missing since June of 2010. And Amber Lynn Costello, a 27-year-old from nearby West Babylon, Long Island, last seen in September 2010. All 3 murdered in their 20s, each one with a petite build, working as a paid escort, using the online site Craigslist to find clients, like Rex Heuermann. Prosecutors say the 59-year-old father of 2 is also a prime suspect in the murder of Maureen Brainerd Barnes, a 4th victim from Connecticut, who had been missing since July of 2007. But it may not stop there. The task force is looking at other unsolved murders, not only on Long Island, but other locations tied to Heuermann. Just as surprising as the sudden arrest was the quiet businessman at the center of it, Rex Heuermann, an architect with a practice in Midtown Manhattan, a married man whose wife filed for divorce almost immediately after his arrest, a father of two who raised his daughter and stepson in Massapequa Park, New York, in the same modest home where he grew up, and right across the bay from where authorities found 11 bodies between 2010 and 2011. I spoke with criminologist Dr. Scott Bond, who in 2011 profiled the Long Island serial killer for the New York Times.
So based upon my training and my experience, I put together a rather detailed profile. 12 years went by, and of course I've been following the case, and then lo and behold, this guy, Rex Heuermann, is arrested, and he matches my profile almost to a T. I figured, first of all, this was a white male, and I suspected, because of where the bodies had been disposed of, that he was very intimately familiar with that area. I suspected that he would be very educated, a professional, very articulate, and patient. And he is all of those things. He's trained as an architect, which by design, you have to be a very organized, articulate person, both to design and then sell your work. And people around him have described him that way.
Since his arrest, Heuermann's neighbors have come forward, sharing their experiences with him over the years.
He was looking over the fence when my wife was sunbathing. He was, peeking over and trying to start conversations with her. And she told me it happened a few times, and it kept happening, and now she was getting creeped out. So I had to talk with the guy.
Very decrepit, very hoarder-like, and disgusting, smelly, not somewhere you want to live nicely. But he acted very intelligent, like he knew the words to say.
The house just always looked like a little odd, just like sticking out like a Massapequa. So I'm shocked, but I'm also not too surprised that somebody like that was in there.
I see him walking. He walks with a briefcase. He walks in a suit. Looks like every other American type person.
Even strangers have told reporters they too remember odd run-ins with the 59-year-old Heuermann.
He could be so meticulous and organized in his killings, and yet his home is disheveled, and it sticks out like an eyesore in the neighborhood, and his wife is driving around in a beat-up old car. That's atypical, but I think the way that we can understand it is in the two areas of his life that mattered most to him, his career as an architect and his avocation, if you will, as a serial killer. Those are the two areas where he was extremely organized and meticulous. Other things, his home, his family, just didn't matter that much to him.
What exactly put Heuermann in the sights of detectives? A key piece of evidence discovered by the new task force had been ignored for over a decade. An old interview investigators found with victim Amber Lynn Costello's roommate. He told homicide detectives over a decade ago that the man Amber was last seen with, someone he described as a hulking ogre, drove a very distinctive car, a Chevrolet Avalanche. When he was re-interviewed in 2022, he repeated the tip about the suspect's vehicle. A review of that information led to the discovery of a Chevrolet Avalanche, registered to Rex A. Heuermann at the time of the murders. For over a year, the task force was quietly collecting other key pieces of evidence to build a case against him. Heuermann used burner phones to meet with escorts, which helped him stay anonymous.
For each of the murders, he got an individual burner phone, and he used that to communicate with the victims. Then shortly after the death of the victims, he then would get rid of the burner phone.
On June 5th, 2010, the day before Megan Waterman was last seen alive, her cell phone was contacted by a burner cell phone, which had been activated that day. records show Megan's phone communicated with the burner phone on June 6th at 1:31 a.m., which was around the time Megan was captured on video surveillance, exiting a Holiday Inn in Hauppauge for the last time. Following that communication, the burner phone showed no further activity. However, cell site records show that Megan's phone traveled to Massapequa Park, with the last location logged at approximately 3:11 a.m. in the vicinity of Heuermann's home. Prosecutors say not only did Heuermann use burner phones to arrange meetings with escorts, in 2009, he's accused of using a victim's phone to traumatize her family. Melissa Barthelемy's sister, Amanda, was terrorized by a series of sadistic calls from someone using Melissa's cell phone after her disappearance. Like a scene out of a horror movie, he described what he had done to her. Based on cell site information, these calls were made from Midtown Manhattan.
Whoever did this was a very sick, evil person. Sick. To say the things he said to Amanda on the phone, I mean, it's a 16-year-old shouldn't even have to hear these things he said to her. She was just hysterical every time a call would come in. They traced the calls, but they said that they only traced them to a tower.
Once the FBI joined the new task force, analysts took a closer look at that cell site data, comparing the victims' phones with the burner phones. This led them to narrow in on a specific area of Massapequa Park. They did the same thing for an area in Midtown Manhattan, where Heuermann's architecture office is located. In addition to cell phone data, detectives found genetic evidence directly linking Heuermann to 3 of the Gilgo 4. Since 2011, Suffolk County Police kept 5 hairs found with the victims.
But back in 2011, in very inhospitable circumstances, in these pine barrens out in Gilgo Beach, a windy, windswept area, they managed to isolate 5 human hairs, 5 thin strands that they preserved and that they kept a chain of custody on.
Analyzing those hairs for DNA wasn't easy due to their degraded condition. But forensic technology advanced to the point where scientists were able to use mitochondrial DNA to link them to Heuermann.
Those are going to be the linchpin. These days, with the CSI effect, juries want DNA.
While investigating Heuermann, authorities collected so-called abandonment samples. One was on a pizza crust left in a takeout box he threw away outside his Manhattan office. A male hair found on the remains of Megan Waterman and a swab from that same pizza crust showed the mitochondrial DNA profiles were the same. Another sample came from Heuermann's wife, whose hairs were found on cans and bottles in a garbage bin outside their home. DNA testing matched with the victims. Heuermann's wife is not implicated in the crimes. Investigators say that she was out of town at the time of the murders.
We looked at the Heuermann family travel records, and we learned that during the murders of the last 3 women, Barthelemy, Waterman, and Costello, that the defendant's wife and children were out of New York State, and he was alone in the tri-state area.
The Heuermann family was forced to vacate their Massapequa Park home as investigators from various agencies collected evidence.
It's a methodical process. We're going to make sure if there is anything that we need to retrieve that's going to help us with the prosecution, we'll take it with us and add it to the package.
Among the stranger things recovered include a painting with a woman's bruised face and a glass case containing a life-size doll. Search teams discovered a vault behind a locked iron door in the home's basement with 279 guns.
He had an arsenal, in a vault that he had downstairs. So it's concerning regarding the guns being registered or illegal or not. That's something that we're still taking a look at.
Search teams also used cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar to find out if anything was buried in the backyard.
A serial killer like this actually has typically 3 separate crime scenes. There's, first of all, the scene where they abduct the individual. Then there's the scene where they take the individual to kill them. And then with an organized killer like this, there's a 3rd crime scene, which is the one that was discovered, and that is where he disposes of the bodies. Now, in some cases, it's quite possible that crime scenes 1 and 2 were the same location. Serial killers like to operate in a comfort zone. They have all the tools that they need at their disposal, things to get rid of the body afterwards, bags, ties, whatever they might need. So it's as crazy as it sounds, it's actually not atypical for a serial killer like this to kill in their own home.
Authorities are also searching a nearby storage unit in Amityville linked to Heuermann. As the task force methodically built its case against Heuermann, they did so in secret for a very important reason.
We knew that when we were investigating this case, that we were playing before a party of one, because we knew the person responsible for these murders would be looking at us. So we were very careful how we handled the investigation. We maintained the integrity of the investigation. Most importantly of all, we maintained the secrecy of that investigation.
Using Google warrants, detectives found in a 14-month period, Heuermann searched about the Gilgo investigation over 200 times. Among his searches were, quote, "Why hasn't the Long Island serial killer been caught?" And, quote, "Why could law enforcement not trace the calls made by the Long Island serial killer?" Documents also reveal he had been compulsively searching for pictures of the victims and of their relatives, including their locations.
In addition to that, there was a lot of torture, porn, and what you would consider depictions of women being abused, being raped, and being killed.
Prosecutors say Heuermann continued to use fake identities with burner phones and junk email accounts to solicit sex workers.
I did hear the district attorney outline his case. I will say to you folks that it's extremely circumstantial in nature. In terms of speaking to my client, the only thing I can tell you that he did say as he was in tears was, "I didn't do this."
We breathe a great sigh of relief. Myself, after being on this case for 12 years and investigating this case relentlessly, and as well the victims' families. It's finally something has been done, and finally somebody has been caught.
The investigation's radius quickly expanded beyond Long Island to South Carolina and Las Vegas, both places where Heuermann owns property. In South Carolina, authorities say he planned to retire on his secluded property, where his younger brother lives nearby.
He saw Rex's picture on TV and knew he was from New York and such, and my husband's going, "This could be Craig's brother. He looks just like Craig." And I started doing some internet searches at that time and found out that Craig was indeed Rex's brother.
It's believed that he had been planning to move to South Carolina, and specifically here to the town of Chester. The property he does own is largely blocked off with a no warrants, no entry sign. Deputies here say for now they are just assisting in the New York investigation into accused serial killer Rex Heuermann, and they say an important piece found here is now on its way up to New York.
The avalanche in South Carolina was the avalanche that the defendant owned at or around the time of the commission of the 3 murders.
Heuermann also purchased 2 timeshares in Las Vegas in 2003 and 2005. Because of his link to the Gilgo Beach murders, authorities in Vegas are now investigating any possible links between Heuermann and other cold cases. Suffolk County Police now confirm they're working with authorities in Atlantic City, New Jersey, to see if Heuermann is connected to the murders of 4 female sex workers in 2006.
Reports that one of the Atlantic City prostitutes murdered in 2006 spent a month in Gilgo Beach before she was strangled gives police more reason to check a possible connection. A connection between the Gilgo 8 murders and Atlantic City's 4.
Another big unanswered question for law enforcement is how could Heuermann have disposed of the bodies undetected for years? As a duck hunter, Heuermann was intimately familiar with the marshy side of Gilgo Beach, part of a barrier island.
We're in essentially a bay that has a lot of little islands. As I said, the dumping ground is here behind me, but this way, directly across the bay, is actually where the accused lived. It does seem to present an area of ingress from here into that area where at night, with a duck boat, which reportedly we're hearing the accused may well have had at the time, you come in here at night, you beach there, and you go in from here, and you really can take your time doing whatever you're gonna do. There's nobody out here.
Furthermore, the victims were found in a burlap that's consistent with a kind used in duck hunting.
He is what's known as a power control killer, very organized and meticulous, who is able to be invisible in a crowd and in plain sight. He has ability to live dual lives and flip a switch almost simultaneously and live as if these two things are not in complete contradiction. And that's why BTK is such a good example, because he did exactly the same thing. He had adult children and a wife of 30 years that had no idea that he was the BTK strangler. They had no clue. He was a respected man in his town. He was the Boy Scout leader. He was the president of his Lutheran church, and yet he could flip this switch and become one of the most sadistic serial killers of the 20th century. It's called compartmentalization.
When it was dumped on me and my mom and my brother, FBI agent literally was standing in my kitchen. He said, "Your dad is BTK." I literally was shaking for 5 days. Mentally, physically, medically in shock. Somebody should have put me out. Instead, they put me on a plane to get me back to Kansas. I didn't stop shaking until I got to my uncle's house on day 5. You're dealing with ongoing issues. I'm still expecting 18 years later that knock on the door, the FBI to show up and completely destroy my world. It's rebuilding your whole life under the glare of the media.
The task force emphasizes this investigation is far from over. Once prosecutors complete analyzing evidence seized from Heuermann's home and other locations, including nearby storage units, the indictment could possibly be updated to include other victims' names like Maureen Brainerd Barnes, a murder case in which prosecutors call Heuermann a prime suspect.
He has not shown any emotion whatsoever.
As Heuermann sits alone in his jail cell, detectives are now asking formerly incarcerated sex workers if they have any memory of the man. Heuermann, a father of 2 who maintained a career as an architect, is not expected to plead insanity. Prosecutors and victims now wait for his day in court to see if the 59-year-old will accept a plea deal or exercise his right to a trial. As the investigation continues, more details are coming to light every single day. We will keep you updated as this story develops.